understand that, if you understand the basics of logic and how to type a while loop, can you put a thumbs up or a check mark in the chat and the participants? So if you don't understand, you can ask a question and ask about what you don't understand, and I'll explain it more in depth. But if you guys don't have any questions, I'm gonna move on. Okay. So now, assignment operators. Remember how I did a equals a plus 1, right? A equals a plus 1. Well, there's actually a faster, more efficient way to write that. And we don't have to just add 1. We can add like 2 or add like 3. Right? And there's actually a faster way to write that. And it works for all these operators. Right? So instead of, well, equals is the same, right? We just do x equals 3. But this x plus equals 3 is equivalent of x equals x plus 3. It's just a faster, more efficient way to write x equals x plus 3 or x equals x plus 1, because you're going to be using that in a while loop a lot, right? That's your counter. That x variable or that a variable we use is called the counter in a while loop. It counts and it keeps track until that condition is false, right? Because you can do a conditional statement checking if that condition is true, right? And we're going to keep increasing that counter, or in some cases decrease that counter, right? We're going to keep changing that counter until that counter is false. So here's a faster way to write it. Instead of resetting the variable using x equals like x plus 3, we just do the operator and then we do an equal sign, right? So here we do x plus equals 3, and for subtraction, minus equals 3, x minus equals 3. For multiplication, x asterisk equals 3, which is the multiplication sign. And then for division, we do x divided equals 3, and then for mod, we do x percentage equals 3, and then for floor division, we do x floor division 3. Well, floor division equals, my bad. There's a typo here. It should be equals here. But yeah. And then we do exponent x, double asterisk for exponent equals 3. Okay, so let's see if this works. Remember here, we print to 100. So instead of doing a plus 1, we can do plus equals 1. And let's see if this works, right? As you can see, it does the same thing, but we used far less space. And to be honest, I think this looks better than a equals a plus 1, right? A plus equals 1 just looks so much better than a equals a plus 1. So yeah, this is how you use the assignment operators. So I'm not going to go too in depth into this because it basically just does the same thing as x equals x plus 3 or x equals x to the exponent 3. Okay, so the main one I want you guys to keep in mind is x plus equals 3 and x minus equals 3, because that's the most common two that you will be using in while loops. Okay. All right. So now we can talk about for loops. So for loops is another way to loop, but instead of using a conditional statement, we pretty much have set what we're going to loop through. So you can also loop through strings like this. You might be wondering how. Well, I'll show you. But for now, I'll show you the basic logic of how a for loop works. So this is actually more complex than a while loop at first to understand, but I feel like for loops are much more simpler than while loops in the long run because they take less space. But this is how a for loop works, right? So we have for x in, and then we insert what we are looping through. Notice how we just insert what we're looping through. We're not going to insert like what our condition is. We don't check the condition if the condition is true. We just insert what we are looping through, and then we just loop through that until we finish. We finish the end of the range. So you don't have to. Okay, one thing we notice is that for this x, we can replace x with anything, right? We can make it like banana or like whatever, like just a name. And notice we don't have to define x, like if like in while loops, we don't have to define this x. It's just there to represent our counter. So we can name this x anything, right? And then there's a range function that is used to loop through numbers, and it starts from 0 by default. So you guys probably don't understand this right now. This is a lot to take in, I know. So I'm gonna try to explain this with the code. All right, so this is our while loop, but we're gonna use a for loop. So this is how we use a for loop. Notice how I'm not defining this x. So we can do in. Then remember how I said we could loop through strings with for loop, right? So let's do like banana. And then notice how we have to put and then we can do print x. So can anybody tell me what's going to be printed here in this for loop? Actually, it is going to print something.
Banana.
Yeah, it's going to print banana, but instead of printing the word banana, it's actually going to print banana one letter at a time. Because, well, let's find it. As you can see, it prints banana by character, one at a time. This is actually very useful because we can split a string into characters. And this is very useful in algorithms that we go over later. But this is how we loop through a string using a for loop. So we do for x. X is basically our counter, but we don't have to define it. The default starts from 0, right? And remember how I said string manipulation, right? You can have like, let's say x equals, let's say like h equals banana, right? That's just our string banana. So before we talked about having a string as banana, right? And we could loop through this, but remember how I said you could do the 5th character in the